Department, and it is our great pleasure to introduce Stuart Bowen. Mr. Bowen was appointed Inspector General for the Coalition Provisional Authority in January 2004, and since October 2004, he served as a Special Inspector General for Iraq Reconstruction. As a taxpayer's watchdog in Iraq, Mr. Bowen oversees more than $63 billion in U.S. funds, including Iraq Relief and Reconstruction Fund, the Iraqi Security Forces Fund, the Economic Support Fund, the International Narcotics Control and Law Enforcement Funding, and the Commander's Emergency Response Program. Over the past 7 years, Mr. Bowen has made 30 trips to Iraq, has managed the production of 364 audits and inspections, issued 5 comprehensive lesson learned reports, and provided 30 quarterly reports on Iraq reconstruction to Congress. His oversight work has produced financial benefits to the United States government in excess of $1.1 billion and has yielded 56 convictions for fraud and other crimes. In 2006, the President's Council on Integrity and Efficiency awarded Inspector General Bowen the Gaston L. Gianni Jr. Better Government Award for demonstrating integrity, determination, and courage. In 2010, the National Intergovernmental Audit Forum presented him with the David M. Walker Excellence in Federal Government Performance and Accountability Award for outstanding oversight work. Inspector General Bowen's public service career includes service to President George W. Bush as Deputy Assistant to the President, Deputy Staff Secretary, Special Assistant to the President, and Associate Counsel. From 1994 to 2000, he held a variety of positions on Governor Bush's Texas staff, including Deputy General Counsel, and prior to that, Mr. Bowen served as Assistant Attorney General of Texas as a briefing attorney to Texas Supreme Court Justice Raul Gonzalez. Mr. Bowen is a military veteran, having served 4 years on active duty as an intelligence officer in the U.S. Air Force, earning the rank of Captain and Air Force Commendation Medal. Licensed by the Texas State Bar, Mr. Bowen is board certified in administrative law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization and admitted to practice before the United States Supreme Court, lower federal courts, and all Texas state courts. He holds an MA from the University of the South and a JD from St. Mary's Law School, where he served on the Laws Journal's editorial board. And Mr. Bowen is father to Gentry Bowen, a first year here at Westmont College. So, will you please join me in welcoming Stuart Bowen?
Good afternoon. Start, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
There we go. It's a pleasure to be here in Santa Barbara. Why? Because I'm in Santa Barbara. This is one of the great places in our country. And the American Riviera, and I saw it when I was flying in with my wife yesterday, looking out the window, and the visuals are stunning, but the ground level's better. And so kudos to all of you students here at Westmont for having the wisdom to pick a great place to go to school. The setting is part of it, but the greater part of it is that this is a blessed place. I've just been here for 24 hours, but I did work out in the gym with Gentry yesterday, so I got a feel of that place, and we walked around campus, and I got a real sense of the strong community that exists here. So Dr. Beebe, the staff here have done just an outstanding job growing this place, especially since the tea fire, which I also watched those YouTube videos. That was a tough time. Right here, where we speak. And, in Texas, they sometimes use fires to burn over fields because what comes later after you burn it over is better. Here we are. Westmont's better. So congratulations to all of you all for making it better and for prospering in the wake of that tough time. I've been going to Iraq for 7.5 years, which is longer than anybody else, and I've been there 31 times, which is more than anybody else, a record that nobody else wants for good reasons, because it's a dangerous place to be. And it was when I first went in February 2004, and I was walking on top of the Republican Palace, which is a coincidental name, on one of Saddam's grandly designed edifices, and the one that was occupied then by the Coalition Provisional Authority. And two people walking in front of me. I was an Officer 1 at that point, and I heard one turn to the other and say, "We can't do that anymore. There's an Inspector General here." That's when I knew what kind of job I'd taken on. A tough one. One that has been fraught with challenge and reward. The reward being seeing a program gradually improve from a very chaotic place in 2004. A reward, ironically, I guess, in some levels, of being able to catch 56 people and get convictions on them for stealing American taxpayer dollars, breaching their trust over there. I'm going to travel on my 31st trip in 3 weeks, and the way I go is I leave Dulles and I fly this time up to London and then to Amman, and then I usually, well, up until now, I've always flown up on a C-130. Usually up front with the pilots, which is a great experience for me because my dad was an Air Force pilot, served in Vietnam through 100 missions over the north and F4, and I was in the Air Force, as you know, from my introduction. And so that's a great way to sort of get in the spirit of things. As I'm flying up, and then when I land at the airport, usually I travel to the Baghdad airport. I travel to the what used to be called the Green Zone, now the International Zone, now really just the embassy. The International Zone is largely defunct at this juncture, by a helicopter. So to give you a flavor of what that feels like, I thought I'd begin my presentation with some video taken from a year ago from the Black Hawk helicopter. You fly in, you land, you put on your gear, anytime you're outside the wall, you got a helmet on, you got a vest on. Flying in, you can see some problems in the distance in Baghdad, maybe a car bomb went off, it looks like. That's the Tigris River. Don't need any fish from there. I got it. Make it sick. So it's about a 15-minute helicopter ride in Black Hawk. So I've done that many times, and that's why my hearing's not as good as it used to be. And here, coming into view, whoops, this is sensitive, hang on. Well, we're not going to watch that again. Well, that was the embassy there, and then the embassy was constructed 2 years ago at a cost of $750 million. It's the largest embassy in the world. It will hold about 17,000 personnel, or at least will be assigned to the embassy in Iraq next year. It's very tight, it's very crowded, it's still attacked frequently, but it's a better place to be than we used to be. Because we have hardened facilities. We actually have cement dormitories that we live in. When we lived at the Republic Palace, I lived in a 12 by 15 trailer, aluminum trailer. A very dangerous place to be, and it was tragically vulnerable for me and my staff. And then on Easter Day in 2008, a rocket hit the trailer of Paul Converse, an auditor of mine from Corvallis, Oregon. It took his life. And so that following week, I was out in Corvallis with his parents and his family, consoling them in the face of that tragic loss. And this has been oversight under fire. In 2007, I had 5 people wounded as well from incoming fire of various sorts. And at the embassy, the old embassy, the palace, there were about 35 people killed over the course of the 6 years that we were there. There haven't been any at the new one, but that doesn't mean there haven't been significant attacks. But after I get there, I usually am traveling out the next day through Baghdad to visit my Iraqi contacts, usually the head of their audit board, Dr. Bassi, the head of the Board of Supreme Audit, which this convoy was part of, and it's every convoy requires a couple days to plan. There are 3 black Suburbans hardened. You've got 2 shooters in each car, and you've got to travel with your black vest on, your helmet, and you go just straight through the streets of Baghdad. Through the traffic, you can see sort of evidences of the security. There are glass walls around those streets. Not as much as there used to be. They've taken down a lot of them. But there you can see on this particular avenue, crossing the Tigris into a part of Baghdad called Kark. This is really the exact center of the city, where most of the government offices are. These are very controlled visits. Can't stay more than an hour because it's just a security concern. So it takes about 15 minutes to travel, and that street we were traveling on used to be called Haifa Street. Was in 2007 the bloodiest street in Baghdad. Bodies dumped on it every night in the middle of the civil war that was occurring. Whoops. Yeah. All right. Let's go next. This is called Route Irish. And this is the road to and from the airport. And when you don't take a helicopter, you travel this 6 miles, and it was the bloodiest 6 miles in the world back in 2006, 2007. Now you can see they painted the barriers on the side, and now it's reasonably safe to travel on that road. It was not, and it certainly wasn't, although I didn't know it in 2004 when I first landed there and got in the vehicles, and I was a bit perturbed at the very high speed that my driver was going and the erratic zigzagging methods he was using. And as I came to learn about what Route Irish was like back then, I understood. It was actually banned from use for a couple of years, starting in 2006 and 2007. Next slide. Okay, that's I want to go to the next slide, Tom. How do I do that? You just watch that.
Yeah.
There we go. This, actually on that trip you just were watching, I was traveling out to Camp Victory, which is where the U.S. forces in Iraq are still housed, and they will be the remainder. There are 40,000 there, actually less today, and less every day. By the end of the year, it will be down to 0, and indeed, Camp Victory is in the process of being closed.
Is that the same one?
Yeah, that's the same one. How do I go forward?
Get it here.
Not responding. Okay, now let's see if we can make that spread that one. There. All right. There you get a sense of what those ornate palaces look like on the inside. It's probably the biggest chandelier in Iraq, and those are Saddam apparently bought out the market on Italian marble for several years because the buildings are just filled with them and in all sorts of decorative motifs, but mostly using quotations from the Quran that are written all along the balconies and across the ceiling. That was actually an interesting day too. That was a nationalization ceremony, a citizenship ceremony for troops who were not citizens but signed up to serve, and as part of their service they became American citizens. Okay, how do we go to the next? There we go. I'll just turn it like that. All right, let's get on to the substance. First of all, before I do, any questions about what you saw there, about what it's like being in Iraq, serving in Iraq, traveling to Iraq? No? Okay. Let's go on to what I've been doing and what my job is about. We are a cross-jurisdictional Inspector General's office. If you haven't heard of Inspector General's office, our job is to do audits and investigations and inspections of how $63 billion is used in Iraq, in Iraq's reconstruction. And everything essentially that you've read about it in the newspaper over these years, you've learned from our reports. We've produced 30 quarterly reports over that time. This is our July one, and you're welcome to have one if you like afterwards. And we've also produced 6 lesson learned reports, and I brought hard lessons are really book-length compendium of how the planning or lack of planning for Iraq's reconstruction developed in 2003 and 2004, and then what the consequences of that up through 2008 were. We have accomplished a lot, and there's a little bit of a summary of what we've accomplished. 194 audit reports, 473 recommendations, 1.2 billion in financial benefits. So we paid for ourselves 5 times over, budget-wise, just through our audit work. Investigations, our convictions are up to 56 now, and our recoveries at 153 million in the form of forfeitures or just direct recovery of money that we have seized. The lessons learned reports have played an important role in our work, simply realizing the mission as I framed it from the outset, recognizing that a lot needed to be developed through the course of this program through oversight because of the ad hoc nature that the Reconstruction program endured. And so out of these lesson learned reports, the first one was on personnel, second one on contracting, third one on program management, fourth one was our book, Hard Lessons, and the fifth was applying hard lessons, applying one overarching lesson. We've been able to engage with the Department of Defense, Department of State, U.S. Agency for International Development, and the others who participate in Iraq and help target, what our audits have found, what our inspections have found, in a way that's constructive, so that taxpayer dollars can be spent more wisely and national security interests can be protected more effectively. More visuals. There's the Chancery, the embassy building. That's where the ambassador works, from where he works, and it's been hit a few times by rockets, but to no effect. And there on the right is Ambassador Ryan Crocker, who became my friend, interestingly, in the course of this, and of his 2-year tenure in Iraq, and I think did an outstanding job with Jalal Talabani, who I will see in a couple of weeks in Iraq. That's the old embassy I was telling you about. The famous pool. Some have written about what happened regarding the Reconstruction program and the skullduggery that occurred around the pool regarding contractors and crimes, etc. But I remember it chiefly for one reason. There's a big tree. This picture is taken from just almost underneath it. And in 2007, 3 of my auditors were sitting underneath that tree, reviewing an audit about 10 o'clock in the morning, when they saw a rocket coming in. They were in the chair, they didn't find a move. And that rocket came in and grazed the top branches of this tree, and as a result, partially detonated. Enough to knock them out of their chairs and daze them, and they lost their hearing, and then landed just 10 yards to the left of this, from the place in which this picture was taken, and didn't go off. Obviously, if it had gone off, my losses would have been 4, not 1, and just emblematic yet again of what a difficult enterprise this was, not just to execute but to oversee. Little visual on reconstruction by sector. You can see the bottom dark blue. It's hard to see from back there, but the dark blue is electricity. The gray is water and sanitation. The light blue is oil and gas. General infrastructure is the lighter gray, and the green is transportation electricity is where we put our money, about $6 billion. This is on the sort of civil reconstruction side. Most of the money was spent on the security side, over $25 billion to train and equip the Army and the police forces. Electricity has paid off over time. Their output this last quarter was 6,558 megawatts per day on the grid, and that is a record high since 2003. And there were plans. I met with Deputy Prime Minister Shahrastani in May when I was in Baghdad, and he has plans to push that electricity output in the next year and a half up to 12,000, which would almost meet demand. I mean, the real problem in Iraq is that they don't charge for their electricity, and they don't enforce the very small fee that is there, and that means it's an ungoverned demand. And thus, there are constant shortages outside of Kurdistan. Kurdistan is sort of the other Iraq that kind of runs itself, and certainly runs itself more effectively than the southern 15 Arab provinces. Some of the projects we visited, the Mosul courthouse. Mosul used to be called Nineveh, Jonah fame, and it's the most dangerous place, I think, in Iraq. At least it used to be. 22 people were killed an hour and a half ago in Sadr City. 28 were killed yesterday in West Baghdad. More Sunni attacks. The Sunni Shia dissension, the lack of reconciliation, the anger is still there and is moving beyond simmering towards boiling again, I fear, as this latest spate of attacks seems to indicate. Mosul, that courthouse represents, of course, the key. What is the key of civil society? The cornerstone must be laid to make progress with the rule of law. And lack of security is symptomatic of a poor rule of law system, and Iraq has a poor rule of law system. They don't convict senior officials for corruption. They haven't convicted any. They just fired their director of the Commission on Integrity, which is their FBI, because he was beginning to pursue such cases, and he was replaced with someone handpicked by Prime Minister Malik. Fort Susie Correctional Facility was a pretty good project where a lot of terrorists were caught and held by U.S. authorities for a while. It transferred to Iraqi control this week. I visited the Anbar Judicial Complex 2 years ago, off to the right, and it was probably the best project I saw. Proof that if project managers actually visit a project, it can turn out well. Town Kamal, an important prison up in the north of Iraq, is built beautifully, but it didn't have any electricity. That's the problem. Healthcare, the famous Basel Children's Hospital. I say famous, maybe infamous is the word, because it was a very important project, an business project, in the very destitute city in the deepest southernmost point in Iraq, excuse me. And it still is not functioning as envisioned, which was a pediatric oncology clinic. But it is seeing patients today, but they still don't have the equipment that was promised, and that we did a couple of reports on that, and frankly, just emblematic of the frustration that we saw in the healthcare sector, so crucial to Iraq, which had such a serious problem with infant mortality. The Najaf Teaching Hospital, on the other hand, was a very good project, but ultimately the most important project was a program to build 150 healthcare clinics in Iraq, and they built 133. They were supposed to do them all by 2006, and they finally finished the 133rd one 2 years ago, but not all of them are operating in clinics. We know the one out in Anbar is being used as a house by the sheikh there. Some of our significant audits, looking at the development front for Iraq, and that when I said I was going to meet President Taliban, I'm also going to meet Prime Minister Maliki in 2 weeks to talk about this issue. This is, if you've ever heard of SIGAR before, you may have heard of the famous missing $9 billion. Really wasn't missing, it was poorly accounted for. It was Iraqi money that the Coalition Provisional Authority had control of during the first year of our occupation. And the Iraqis are quite up in arms about this, seeing it as wasted, lost, frittered away, in any event, a breach of fiduciary duty on our part with regard to the management of those funds. That last point, they may have some basis for making. But our audit, which will be out soon on this latest tranche of money that we've been tracking, shows that indeed most of the money was properly delivered to the central bank of Iraq. What happened to it thereafter, though, is unknown, and I don't think anyone will ever know. We've had an impact through our audits. That's the savings I was talking about. We've saved 151 million, put 678 million to better use, and we've got 40 million in challenge payments that we hope to recover. Got an audit coming out next week. I was editing it yesterday, and it really captures the entire Iraq Reconstruction program in one single audit. There were so many factors caught up in trying to carry out the Fallujah wastewater treatment system. This was the largest project in Anbar. Anbar was the most rested Sunni province in the west of Iraq, and it was a source of a great deal of conflict. And Fallujah indeed was the scene of the bloody fight in 2004 in Iraq. For unknown reasons, we tried to build a huge water treatment plant in the middle of that, and it resulted in a lot of debt for contractors and for government officials overseeing them. It resulted in long delays, and it actually was not finished. It was finished until this summer. You can see 32 million was the original cost. 110 million is what it is going to cost. But the crucial point is that the purpose of these kinds of projects, of the stabilization reconstruction operation, is to help pacify the population by winning their hearts and minds through effective service provision. And this is a study in what happens when you don't plan well to meet that kind of a mission. And as I'll talk about in a few minutes, the United States is not well structured to plan these kinds of missions. I don't expect we'll ever do in Iraq and Afghanistan again. I mean, that's certainly lesson learned number one. Don't do 10-year, $63 billion stabilization operations. But we will be doing stabilization operations. How we do them, I think, is a pressing question. And whether we're that much better off now than we were when the Fallujah wastewater treatment was taken in 2004 is a tough question to answer. I think the answer is probably not. Khan Bani Saad visited 40 minutes north of Baghdad, $40 million prison project, all of it wasted. There was just no oversight, and it will never be used. There it is. That's what got built. We got 40 million. The Iraqis call it the whale in the desert. Example of where we visited. We visited many projects, hundreds of projects across the country, and focused a lot on electricity, of course, and security and justice. Our investigation workload, unlike the rest of my office, has continued to expand, but the reason why we're contracting in the audit side and we've closed the inspection side is we're done with our mission at the end of next year. But through the establishment of a number of new technical programs that have allowed us deeper looks into the use of money by individuals, we have uncovered a lot more wrongdoing. And so I think, as you can see by that sharp spike in the last couple of years, I think we're going to see a lot more convictions before we're done at the end of next year. And as I said, 56 now, we'll be over 100 in a year from now, and we'll have plenty of work to hand off to other organizations, probably keeping the FBI before we're done. Examples of the kinds of things that we've recovered. These brazen crooks
and they steal cash. Actually, we convicted earlier this year a Northern California Marine major named Schmidt. He and his wife, both of them convicted. They seized for participating in a cover-up. It's for $2.5 million in cash he mailed home. Think about that. $2.5 million. Foolishly, they started, spending it. If you start moving money in excess of $10,000, well, it shows up somewhere, and you eventually caught it. But this is from one of our first big cases down in Babylon, of all places. We uncovered a massive criminal scheme involving a contractor and military officers, and sent 9 people to prison in the Stein Bloom case. There were just an entire litany of projects that they claimed to have built, which weren't built, and instead all that time pocketed and sent to overseas bank accounts. Some of it used to buy things like motorcycles and sports cars. So, hard lessons. I realized pretty early in my tenure that this was going to be a tough story, and that we had to capture the truth as best as we could, not just through our audits and inspections and investigations and quarterly reporting, but through what happened. And so in 2006, I initiated the project to really do a complete look at the pre-war planning, all of what happened in 2003, and then the consequences of what happened thereafter. And in the process, I interviewed Secretary Rumsfeld and all of the senior officials at DOD and state and aid, and all of the generals and all the ambassadors who served in Iraq, just to get their story about what happened. And we captured it in his book, and ultimately for the purpose of identifying, what do we need to do to strengthen our system, our structure, our approach to planning, executing, and being accountable for stabilization and reconstruction operations. And there were some important lessons that came out of it. That first one, Reconstruction's extension of political strategy, that's Clausewitz, but not realized in Iraq, not really thought through because of the adhocracy that unfolded. Security is necessary for large-scale reconstruction to succeed. That's done. You already know that. That's self-evident. You ought not to think that's a lesson learned, but the facts, unfortunately, beg it forward. And developing the capacity of people and systems is as important as bricks and mortar. What that means is capacity building, so that they can govern themselves. Really focus on rule of law, and focus on education, and focus on healthcare. Those three still very gaping needs in Iraq. And I think that last one is very, very important. Gear the program to the capabilities and the needs of individual people. One example, the single most expensive project in Iraq, the Nazir water treatment system, we've done 2 reports on it. 320 million. Maybe up to as high as 380 million, given what the following contract. They wanted to do the best of breed. I remember thinking with that phrase. They wanted to give them the very best water treatment system that they could have. The road was paved with good intentions here, and unfortunately, when it was built, there were 2 crucial errors. One was when it was turned on, its capacity was too much for the water distribution system it served. So when it turned on, suddenly it was, like 4th of July with the fire plugs turned on. The streets just exploded with broken pipes spraying water everywhere, and a disastrous effect, of course, and frustration of the Iraqis. And second, it was too complicated for the Iraqis to manage. So when we visited it, was operating at 14%. Now, we did an evaluation of it. Today, it's still being used at under 20%. Because the Iraqis, the Iraqi mothers say their children are getting sick from the water being used from this plant. And it is somewhat emblematic of really how crucial it is to consult ahead of time and build to local capacity and interests.
we need to reform our approach, and here is sort of Exhibit A of the need for reform. That was the planning, structure, management system for Iraq Reconstruction in 2004. It's sort of just a, it's a migraine as a line diagram, I think, and it worked as well as it looks. So what do we need to do to reorganize the U.S. government for stabilization operations? I've been talking about the flaws. You've learned a lot already from this presentation about the effects of those flaws. But the key is ensuring that there's integration, not coordination among the main players. And that requires creating some authority, some concrete authority, that has a clear responsibility for planning, executing, and being accountable for stabilization operations. Right now, it's diffused among a variety of agencies. Indeed, when the Wartime Commission had its hearing last year on this issue, who's in charge of reconstruction in Afghanistan, there was no answer. DoD state agents were unable to identify a clear point of responsibility for the reconstruction program. Now, that ought to be an easy question to answer. So we proposed in our latest lesson learned report the creation, or I should say the agglomeration of the pieces out there that manage or try to manage stabilization operations into a single entity that is exactly what I just described. It has that responsibility for planning, executing, and being accountable for stabilization operations. I just called it the U.S. Office for Contingency Operations, and it is it's actually starting to come to some life as an idea on Capitol Hill. There is a bill that it's been generated, not introduced, but will be soon. Its adjunct idea of creating a special inspector general for overseas contingency operations is permanent. In other words, permanentizing my office to ensure that at least there's that small oversight regarding fraud, waste, and abuse is an introduced bill, and it may become law. But that's the cleanup piece. The management piece is not solved yet, and that's what we've been working on at SIGR for the last year and a half to try and formulate this and help the Congress formulate a way to tackle this problem and try to help the agencies understand what it is. The agencies, I think, at this point are heading in various directions on this. Senior officials I've met with at DoD are concerned about states' capacity, particularly in Afghanistan at this point, and about, frankly, the capacity for the United States to engage in integrated contingency operations. In the State Department, they're not supportive of this idea. This report you can find on www.sigr.mil, and I've included the State Department's comments, and they prefer to have flexibility. They'd rather do it on an ad hoc basis rather than have a structure ahead of time that's planning to execute and manage. And ultimately, it's about trying to implement a reform that they've been pushed for a while, called the Coordinator for Reconstruction and Stabilization, but frankly has not really taken hold in any meaningful way. Matter of fact, they've never been in Iraq. They haven't really made an enormous difference in Afghanistan. And something called the Quadrennial Development Diplomacy Review was completed last December. It proposed creating another entity within the State Department that would called the Contingency Civilian Stabilization Office. That would take over that mission, but again, it's another idea on paper and stuck within the stovepipe of an agency and not integrated. And I think the key to these operations, stabilization and reconstruction operations, is to achieve interagency integration, and that requires pulling this responsibility out of the various departments. The Department of Treasury has a role, the Department of Justice has a role, the Department of Defense, the Department of State, and U.S. Agency for International Development have the largest roles. But agriculture has a role too. It's scattered across the government, and it's had deleterious effects. Obviously, as I've painted for you here this afternoon, in Iraq, we spent $63 billion there, and the Iraqi people are resentful. And indeed are trying to campaign, perhaps even to file a claim for the money that they feel like we lost their money. That's not the outcome we were seeking, obviously. And so lessons learned have to become lessons applied, or they're lessons lost. And they have to be applied in a coherent fashion that's not oriented towards message management, careerism, or politics. And that's difficult to do. But I think ultimately the situation today is similar to what it was in the mid-'80s at the Pentagon when there was a disintegration among the service departments. And a law called Goldwater-Nichols changed the way the Pentagon operates by imposing jointness on planning and execution. And I think we've seen the good fruit of that in the military campaign since then. And I think our military, not just speaking patriotically, speaking empirically, is the most effective fighting force in history. But here's the thing: we're done with our wars in 2 weeks. Then we have maybe 8-year stabilization operations. And are we well integrated for those? No. You all know that now. What's to be done about it? Well, I think integration, Occam's razor. If you're not integrated, you don't have clarity. So the problem is staring in your face and demanding a solution to pursue it. The challenge, of course, is the politics of it. And who actually is in control? The difference between Goldwater-Nichols and this moment is Goldwater-Nichols was one department, the Department of Defense. This is three of our oldest departments. Obviously, defense and state, and then Treasury is in a major role too. Our three oldest departments, and they have interests. But there is some traction for it. Brent Scowcroft thinks this is the way to go, and Ryan Crocker does, and so does General Austin, the commander of the U.S. forces in Iraq. When I briefed him on this, he said this is the right way. I think one of the most telling endorsements that I heard was when I briefed the commander of the Corps of Engineers, Van Antwerp, who just retired this summer. Great guy. He really did a lot for the Corps. He said this is the way to go forward. He was managing the relief and reconstruction work in Iraq and Afghanistan for the last 4 years. And he will testify if the bill ever gets introduced and gets a hearing, so he said, on the reality of this integration that daunts our efforts to try and protect our national security interests abroad. That's what this is ultimately about. It's not defense, it's not development, it's not diplomacy. Those are the missions of the Department of Defense and the U.S. Agency for International Development and the Department of State, and they do them very well. But it's the fourth B. It's something that's a hybridized version of each. It includes each of those and other things as well. And it is the venue. It is the situation. It's the structure within which we're going to have to protect our national security interests abroad for our lifetimes. We've had the stabilization operation every year but 2 since 1980. The others, much smaller than Iraq and Afghanistan, include Bosnia and Kosovo. That's the next largest. Most of the 90s involved that, and frankly, most of the lessons experienced and learned from there, realized and suffered in Iraq and Afghanistan. Obviously, lessons learned. We had Panama, Somalia, Grenada, Haiti twice, and so this is not just the good idea ferry on somebody's shoulder. Let's fix this. This is about structuring a useful planning mechanism in an executory capacity and a focused point of accountability. Those who are accountable for most of what happened in the early Iraq state were part of the temporary agencies, the adhocracy, and their government. And there was ultimately there was no one person accountable. And so that's why I've been busy for 7.5 years dealing with the consequences of that weak or broken structure, and we'll continue to pursue it for the next year and a half until we're done with our mission. And perhaps in that time we'll see some meaningful reform coming from Congress. We propose, they dispose. They decide, and they're smarter than we are at figuring. They'll figure out the right way to go. But I'm ultimately somewhat agnostic on whether it's this or something else, as long as there's reforms, as long as these lessons are captured and there is meaningful reform that strengthens our capacity to protect our national security interests, he says. So with that, thank you for your patience.